What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the pros and cons of hiring a local accountant for your nonprofit. So if you are in the market for an accountant and you're wondering whether or not the local route is for you, then keep watching. We've been contacted many times actually by different nonprofits who are in market and they're kind of determining, should I go in-house? Should I go virtual / the outsource route and hire you and your team? Or like, should I go local? Quite often, actually, more than you may even think, we do have those organizations circle back and they'll be like, while we love what you and your team are doing, we've decided to go with a local accountant. And no harm, no foul, totally fine. But I want to talk about some of the pros and cons so you can determine whether or not that's a route that you want to take with your organization. Before we get into all of the beautiful reasons that you might want to consider going that route, let's first tackle the cons. So the first con is limited availability. A lot of times local accountants are extremely short-staffed and work either solo or maybe with one other person. And so depending on the size of your organization, the complexity of the work, you might want to consider whether or not that would be an issue for you. The other part when you're thinking about limited availability is that a lot of the local accountants are more tax focused. So if you are just looking for a CPA or a tax accountant, that might work for you. However, if you are looking for year-round support, meaning like bookkeeping, accounting, grant reporting, maybe possibly some sort of like fractional outsourced CFO type services, it might be a little difficult to get from an accountant who is solo and who may be extremely tax focused as far as the services and work that they provide. The next con is a lot of times local accountants are potentially less skilled, meaning that they have less expertise in this specific area. Think about when you've driven around your, local neighborhoods or downtown area. A lot of times when you see these shops, these accountant offices, a lot of times it is servicing everyone. That's individuals, that's businesses, that's nonprofits, right? But as you can imagine, the more generalized you are, that means the less specialized you are. And so you want to consider whether or not that is going to be an issue for your organization. What I know for sure, after working with organizations for a number of years, is that it is very important to have an accountant that knows nonprofits inside and out. It is not just about the taxes. The accounting and bookkeeping has to be solid because it informs a lot of things. Mainly, right, if you are like grant funded or you're working with like government contracts and government grants, like there are a lot of stipulations, a lot of requirements there. And so if the accountant is less specialized and they are more operating in a more generalized way, if they're serving a lot of different types of businesses and individuals, 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be the best move for your organization. And the last con that we're going to talk about is technological constraints. It is no secret that if you are an accountant and you operate in a virtual space, 9 times out of 10, you are a lot more tech savvy because you have to be, right? You're servicing organizations that are, some may be located where you are, but some may be located in other states on a different coast. And so you have to have a very set tech stack that you're using. You have to know how to onboard and offboard people virtually. You have to know how to use, right, that technology or that software with the different organizations. It almost requires you to be very technologically sound. However, when you are working with a local accountant, a lot of times the software is legacy software. They're using desktop applications. You typically have to come in and, provide your documents, or you're having to like fax and scan versus being able to send things over electronically or have access, let's just say, for example, to like a shared drive or a Google Drive where docs are uploaded and things like that. And so you have to think about whether or not you in your organization, right? How do you operate? Are you tech savvy? Are you still using legacy or antiquated systems and software? Because if the accountant works similarly to you, then they make work for you. But if you are much more advanced as it relates to like technology, if you're working remotely already or on a hybrid sort of schedule, then having an accountant who is a lot more tech savvy would probably be a better fit for you. So of course, we can't talk about the cons without talking about the pros. And so I gave you 3 cons, so I'm also going to give you 3 pros. And the first pro, which is probably the easiest to kind of point out, is face-to-face, right? There is this option or ability to meet your accountant face-to-face, to sit down, have face-to-face meetings. Now, I know that in a world of post-pandemic, Zoom life, there are a lot of people who prefer in-person interaction. If that is important to you, if you know that you want to be able to walk into the office and actually lay eyes on your accountant, then you want to determine like maybe this is a go for you, right? So off the top, face-to-face meetings is the first pro. The next pro is knowledge of local laws and regulations, right? So we work with a lot of different organizations that get like county or state or local grants. And so if your accountant is a local accountant, a lot of times they will be very, very well versed in how the laws and the regulations work in that state, in that county, right? Depending on how your funding sources are set up, if you are, let's just say, heavily funded by grants that are local based or that are county based, for example, working with someone who are well versed and know those stipulations and those compliance laws inside and out could be of benefit to your organization, because they can assist with making sure you remain compliant and that and are kept abreast of what's going on at that level. And the last pro is community connection. So a local accountant, as you probably can think of, right, they probably have deep ties to the community, right, which means that they might be able to introduce you to certain businesses or service providers, or introduce you to or open you up to certain partnerships that your organization can take advantage of, different networking opportunities, things that an outsource or like virtual accountant wouldn't be able to assist with. If you are a nonprofit that has like deep community ties and the work that you do is like community based or community focused, then it might do your organization some good to partner with service providers that also serve the community, and that would be inclusive, right, of your accountant. When you're listening to me speak, and I'm talking about the pros and the cons, you want to think about like what best serves your nonprofit. And that's why I always say, like, you always want to start with the needs assessment of your nonprofit before you start looking into the options and the resources, because if you do a needs assessment and you realize that virtual is not the way for you, you shouldn't even be looking at virtual accountants, right? You might automatically start looking at, okay, local versus in-house. And so start with the needs assessment, right? And then work your way to the options based off of what the organization needs. And so I hope that this was helpful. Just a little quick 1-2 on the pros and cons of hiring a local accountant for your nonprofit. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comment box below and I'll be sure to answer, and I'll see you guys in the next video.